Well, hello, Reno. Wow. Well, it's it's a Tuesday. I'd like to see this crowd on Saturday night. I'll tell you so. Ready to go. First of all, thanks to Ed Helms. Can we give him another round of applause? That guy's amazing. Look, he could be doing anything else, but he came here because he loves this country, and so I am grateful for that. Special thank you to Andrew. Our union members across this state and across this country know that unions built the middle class and unions built America. And I just have to tell you, there's so many great things here, but I have to tell you, for Americans across the country, you need to send Jackie Rosen back to the Senate. You need to send Jackie Rosen back. Before we begin, I'm back again, and the reason is because I know so many folks in here, loved ones, neighbors, still contending with the horrific damage from the Davis fire. We were out here when that was happening. Our hearts are with the families and the community impacted, and I have to tell you, let's take a moment and give a grateful round of applause for our first responders and the folks who put themselves out there. I was up visiting them last month, and just to see the courage, and this is what Americans do at a time like this. We gather together. And look, all of you, truly, so many things you could do. You came early, you got in line, you're waiting. We know why you're here. You're gathering with community. You're gathering with folks who know. You drove from Carson City. You did all the things necessary. You came here for that very simple and beautiful reason. You love America. That's why you're here. Well, thank you. And I got to say, you probably figured this out about me. I kind of talk the way I see it, and I'm a little bit old school, but I'll have to tell you, like all of you, the deep respect for this country, what we have. Call me old-fashioned, but a president's character and words should matter. They do matter. They do matter. It's presidents, when this country's at its most challenging times. At the heart of the Great Depression, that first inaugural address, President Franklin Roosevelt, as he saw Americans scared, struggling, wondering what was next, made those famous words that we all heard when we were in school and knew that that's what America was about. All we have to fear is fear itself. And we bucked up, and folks helped their neighbors. Then we saw communism spreading across the globe, suppressing freedoms, crushing democracies, and it was growing. And Ronald Reagan stood up and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." That's what we do. And in the most consequential presidential election of our lifetime, in the only presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stood up and said, "They're eating cats, they're eating dogs." Exactly right. Exactly right. If he were a comedian or something else, that would be one thing. But it's too damn serious to be funny. When he did that, the Republican governor of Ohio, was forced to send state law enforcement to escort children to school. And none of it was true. Donald Trump also said, instead of being like Ronald Reagan and standing up to the Russians and their expansion, Donald Trump told the Russians, "Do whatever the hell you want" to one of our allies as they rolled into the Ukraine. And just today, we learned a little bit more about what he said. There's news reporting that Donald Trump has had as many as 7 private phone calls with Vladimir Putin. I can guarantee you that Kamala Harris and I do not have dictators on speed dial. So, look, it's pretty simple. You get it. Our allies don't trust him. The people who work with him know how dangerous he is. And people like Putin flatter Trump, and Trump looks up to him. Because what we know is they can walk all over him. He's easily played. Flattery will get you everywhere with Donald Trump. Look, his own national security advisor warned us he is easily manipulated by people like Putin. But again, it's probably a pretty simple reason. Donald Trump's looking out for Donald Trump. That's what he does. Now, the one that I have to tell you as a governor, and for many of you here, this one makes my blood boil. When we were struggling because of Donald Trump's incompetency during the COVID pandemic, we were trying to get whatever materials we could, COVID testing, whatever we could get. It turns out now that Donald Trump was sending COVID machines to Vladimir Putin that we couldn't get in our states. Every day. So, and now, as we watch and our hearts go out, and as governors and as American citizens, we see the heartache, the turmoil, the loss, the trauma that happened after Hurricane Helene and a natural disaster. And we know we work together. You saw it right here during the Davis fire. I watched all of you, many of you. You stopped campaigning and started collecting goods for people who were in the fires. You stopped doing politics and other things to look out for your neighbors. But now we've got Donald Trump's staff telling us that Donald Trump was refusing to send aid to disasters until he found out how the people in those areas voted. Now, I know that the bar has been lowered on these things, but can we all just agree this is the kind of stuff that would have ended political careers before they started? Donald Trump is a risk to our national security and can't get anywhere near the White House. You know he will say and do whatever is good for Donald Trump. But here's the thing. That's not Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris will stand up to thugs like Vladimir Putin, and she's made it clear. And here's why, and I love this. From her first day as a prosecutor all the way up to being vice president, she walked in the courtroom the first time, and she said she uttered 5 words in that courtroom. Kamala Harris, for the people. Kamala Harris, for the people. Took on the predators, took on the fraudsters trying to get people out of their homes, returning money to them, people who tried to take union pensions. She stood up to transnational gangs trying to human traffic or move drugs, and she stood up to corporate interest. And this is the thing that we're all hungry for. She never hesitated to reach across the aisle and work together to solve problems. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. Now, I'm proud to be her running mate. And she oftentimes says this, where could a kid from Oakland in a middle-class family run with a kid who grew up around the farms of rural Nebraska? When we talk small towns, there's something we do. We try and out-small town each other. So you say, I grew up in a small town. How many people? 400. People go, oh, impressive, 300. And then I will say 24 classmates. And they're like, all right, that's not bad. That's not bad. But what she says is, growing up in a small town, where else in America can a kid who grows up in a small town in rural Nebraska and a kid who grows up in Oakland and her mom, single mom, working hard to get him a house, where else but in this country can those two be on a ticket to be president and vice president? But she... Look, you know what we know? Those who want to divide us, what Kamala knows, whether it's Oakland or whether it's Butte, Nebraska, what we learned around those type of people, we didn't grow up in the same place, but she says we grew up around the same people. People who knew you took care of your neighbors. You looked out for the common good. Those are the values that we grew up with. Those are the things that motivated us to run for public office. The same thing that motivated Kamala Harris to run for those offices that she did. And look, how nice will it be to have those values in the White House of the United States? So. Now you might know it's a group of like-minded folks here, but not everybody thinks the same. There's some folks on the other side got a little bit different track record on how they view these things. And you don't need me here. You know in Nevada the pain you felt under the Trump years. 24,000 jobs lost in this state alone. Now, he may tell a different story, but he's not telling the truth. Because the truth is jobs were lost in this. Right here, Kamala Harris has created 285,000 jobs, and income's up $9,000 on those jobs. Companies have announced over $10 billion in private sector investments in this state through clean energy projects like solar and battery manufacturing, right here. Donald Trump says he wants to roll back the Inflation Reduction Acts. And I think today, $500 million in Senator Vance's Ohio, and he called it like it's chump change or table scraps. Those are thousands of jobs. Those are making America energy independent. Those are bringing down our costs. But you know what? That's not who Donald Trump is interested in. I'll give him this. At least he just point blank said it. He invited his rich buddies down to Mar-a-Lago. They're sitting there, and he's giving a speech, and he said, look at all of you. You're rich as hell, and I'm going to give you a tax cut. He kept his word. He kept his word. And every single year in his budgets, he proposed cutting Social Security. And now, you heard it last week, no matter what he says, trying to tell you now that he's responsible for the Affordable Care Act that protects you. The only reason we still have it was because John McCain stood up and said no. Look, you all know it. This country and this world can't take 4 more years of Donald Trump. It's that simple. Now all of a sudden they're pretending. I had to be correct. Sometimes I have to be corrected on the things I say. I will own that. I said they didn't have a plan. My bad. They do have a plan. It's called Project 2025. I did say this. They said, oh, I don't know anything about that. And I said, well, Senator Vance, you wrote the foreword to the architect's book. You might know something. If you write, I don't know, I've never written someone's foreword to a book, but I'm assuming if you do that, you remember them. That would just be me. But I do know this, as a football coach, you take the time to draw up a playbook, you're going to run the plays. You're going to run the plays. And those plays are tax cuts for the wealthy, undermining the ACA, gutting the protections that we have on pre-existing conditions. But Kamala Harris gets it, and she gets it because she grew up middle class like so many of us. She understood it. The economy works best when it's fair. We have a saying in Minnesota, pretty simple one, I bet you have it here too. We all do better when we all do better. That one's not that hard. She laid out a plan, not a concept of a plan, a real plan. An opportunity economy that says every single person matters and everybody will be left up and not left behind. A child tax credit, so in a child's first year of life, that family will have the ability to buy that crib, buy that car seat, make sure that they can tackle skyrocketing costs around child care. You know, not all of us can just count on a family member, but there's got to be a way, and Kamala Harris laid it out to make sure everything from universal pre-K to making sure child care is affordable. That's real. And I don't know, I know you're busy people, you don't have time, but the Vice President was on this morning and laid out a plan for something so many of us know is absolutely critical to give families peace of mind. How do we care for our loved ones? How do we care for our loved ones when they're getting older and need the care they have? And what Kamala Harris proposed was having Medicare for the very first time expand to cover home care and home health care. And here's something else. Imagine this, that it's been this long. Also to have Medicare, and some of you out there, I'm getting there a little, getting a little short in the hair and a little long in the tooth. Proposing that Medicare, because it's about making us healthy, covers vision and hearing for our seniors. She got asked how she's going to pay for it. She's already got the plan. For the first time in history, she negotiated with Big Pharma to make sure that we can now negotiate for Medicare drugs. The savings we make from that can pay for our senior care and expanding Medicare. And just say something about, talking about price gouging, this idea of insulin. If any of you know to get this, capping insulin at $35, some of you know this. Here's the deal about price gouging. Businesses have the right to make money. We're capitalists. We know how that works. But it's got to be fair. It's got to be moral. It costs about $5 to manufacture a vial of insulin, and they were selling it for $800. Now it's capped at $300. So when we talk price gouging, and I was glad to see this, President Biden made a statement. Airlines charging people exorbitant amounts to fly out of Florida to get out of the hurricane. That's price gouging. That's price gouging. But here's the thing. The American dream is out there, getting more folks in. This is a state of doers. This is a state of entrepreneurs. This is a state that knows this. For the first time, a tax credit to start your business has been frozen at $5,000. That's not enough to get the average cost to start a small business and get it off the ground, about $40,000 for folks. She's proposed $50,000 tax credit to start it out. And I know this one for all of you, and you got to hear a little bit of it, and I baffled by some of this. Last week I had a little conversation with Senator Vance, and it was about housing. It was about housing. And the solution is, well, we should just build on federal lands or something. And I said there's no federal lands around Minneapolis, so what are you going to do? But the point is, the housing issue is real. This is something for many of us, when you bought that first house, that's everything. And it's everything because it's your biggest investment, it's generational wealth, but it's much more than that. It's the safety for your family. It's the place you gather for holidays. It's the place you bring your kids home from the hospital the first time in that house. For these guys, they don't ever want to mention the other side of this. The other side of it is you got folks buying up houses to sell them as commodities just like they buy stocks and bonds. Prices in this county have increased 50% since 2017. You know it. Big Wall Street firms. I had to look, hedge fund manager and venture capitalists. That's not the jobs most of us do. Those are the facts of the folks buying up. There was a case here, one company buying 260 homes in a single day. That's to make profit. Look, everybody has the right to sell their home, but you have a right to work on a market that works and those moments in your lives that make a difference. That's why Kamala Harris has a plan, build 3 million new homes and have a $25,000 down payment assistance for folks to get started. Young folks out here. Look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to have that home. And we know this. When people have homes and stability, and they have jobs, and their kids get off to school with food in their belly, everybody does better. Everybody does better. So look, what you know is, Kamala Harris and I get this. The idea that we're fighting for, she comes out to that beautiful song, Freedom, coming out Freedom. Well, it's more than that. It's the freedom for you to live the life you want to live. That's what it's about. And I know in this room, there's Republicans in this room. And there are. And I say this because those of us remember, the Republican Party in this country has contributed much to this nation. They have been there. Look, we don't always agree on some of this, but I will guarantee you, when the old Republicans talk about freedom, they meant it. They meant it. Now these guys, Donald Trump, turns out when he's talking about freedom, that government should be free to be in your doctor's office, to be in that school library, or to be pretty obsessed about being in your bedroom. I would argue the party of Ronald Reagan would want government out of all of those things. Now look, Donald Trump is out there telling folks if they return to power, don't worry about your reproductive freedoms. I got it. I got it. He told all the women here, he told you he would be your protector. So the other day in that little debate I mentioned, they're kind of affecting this Project 2025. They want to monitor of women's pregnancies. And I saw Senator Vance, there were a couple moments of clarity where he said, well, people just don't trust us on these things, you know. And that's where my wife is really happy. Some of you saw me face on this. I almost blurted out, no, you know, no kidding. No kidding. Look, to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, women don't trust you. And I heard some of you, I know this is a Nevada golden rule. The very simple thing on so many of these things that make the world go round is just mind your own damn business and things will go better. I don't want to speak for the Republicans here, but I got to feel like that's a mantra of the old Republican Party. Just mind your own business on this. And for some of you, it gets very personal. And look, there are women out there that don't want to have, their names are household names now because they nearly died trying to avoid these Trump abortion bans. And for me, and for so many of you out there, they're going another step further, banning things like fertility treatments. Those are our decisions. Those are our decisions to make. Whatever family you want to have, or no family, or whatever that family looks like, that's your decision, not government's decision. And I certainly don't want Donald Trump making that decision. So for Gwen and I, years of infertility treatment. And when we had access to health care, which all of us need. So if you have health care, you have access to that. Finally, on that day, our daughter was born. Some of you have heard me say this, most powerful in the universe. We named her Hope because we finally had it. She and her brother mean the world to me. And that's what this election is about. It's about freedom. And I want to make that appeal again. The party of Reagan needs to stand on personal freedoms, not with Donald Trump's way of doing things. When Kamala Harris talks about freedom, she means your freedom to make your own choices about health care, about your family, about the books you read, about the life you want to live. And I'm going to go back to this. These guys had the audacity, especially seniors here. My mom's 89. I'm so proud of her. She's still living in the house where I grew up and graduated out of high school from. She's there. And I can tell you this. She worked her whole life paying into Social Security. It was there when my dad died. It was there when my little brother's in elementary school, so my mom to provide those benefits. She uses her Social Security check to pay her bills and live her life with dignity. Now look, every year in Donald Trump's budget, he tried to cut it. Called it a Ponzi scheme. And J.D. Vance said it's the roadblock to fiscal sanity. But I'll say this, from where they're standing, that might actually make sense. Because my feeling is, I don't know, I've never been a billionaire. So if you are one, my guess is you don't give one damn if your Social Security check comes or not. But if you're my mom, it's pretty damn important that your Social Security check comes. So look. Freedom to make your health care decisions. Freedom to live in dignity in your senior years. Freedom to be there if tragedy strikes you and that there's a safety net there. We oftentimes talk about this. This is a state that you know a little something about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You know how to do that. But the thing is, sometimes in life, you don't have any boots. And they're loaned to you by Social Security. They're loaned to you by your neighbors so that you can get back on your feet. Those are the things that freedom means. And I got to tell you, this one for all of you, for all of us, this piece of freedom is the one that we should hold most dear. The freedom to send our little ones in their best clothes to school without being shot dead in their classroom. Look, there's a whole lot of you out here just like me, veterans, hunters, gun owners. A lot of you, you're here. Look, we understand the Second Amendment. We understand what that is. But we also understand this is not a discussion about the Second Amendment. We can do common sense things to withhold our first responsibility, the protection of our children. So I reject the notion that you can't protect the Second Amendment and protect our children. Other countries do it. Why can't we? Why can't we do it? Donald Trump told us to get over it, and J.D. Vance said it's a fact of life. Kamala Harris was very clear. She's the one who said, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Look, I know I'm preaching to the choir. You get it. But I also want to tell you, our recital's in 28 days, choir. And we need to sing. And when we sing, we get to turn the page on these guys. Put in a new generation of leadership with a new way forward. And we, as Americans, get the greatest privilege to self-determine where we're going, not just for the next 4 years, but the next 40 years. Not just for a single state or a single country, but the world is looking for us to bring back the values of America. So you've heard me say it. It's all gas, no brakes for 28 days. I've been saying to people, we'll sleep when we're dead, and I had somebody walk up and said, you're being way too literal. You look like hell, man. So, but it's okay. We do it, and you're here, and we're excited, and we're going to do the work because we believe in the promise of America. So you know, 28 days, and the Vice President said it. When we fight, we win. When we fight, when we vote, let's go.